The Archie situation comedy musical variety show is a television pilot that aired on the ABC network in the year 1978. Believe it or not, this television pilot is actually a follow-up to a previous television pilot from 1976 called the ABC Saturday comedy special titled Archie. According to this blurb from a TV Guide, David Caruso was originally cast as Archie, but was replaced shortly before filming on the first pilot began. Supposedly, the change was so sudden that publicity photos of Dennis Bowen, the actor who actually ended up playing Archie, credited him as Caruso. The only real information I've found on the 1976 Archie special comes from the Encyclopedia of Television Series Pilots and Specials from the years 1974 through 1984 by Vincent Terrace. The pilot apparently involves Archie trying to arrange for a popular singing group called the Hound Dogs to perform at Veronica's birthday party. Also of interest is that Archie comics character Little Jinx is also credited as a character in this special. Little Jinx first appears inside the pages of Pep Comics issue number 62 by the year 1947. I guess the original pilot, which I've never had the pleasure of seeing, wasn't up to the network standards, and they ordered that the Archie special be retooled as the Archie situation comedy musical variety show. As the pilot starts, the entire cast is magically zapped onto a bizarre-looking stage where Archie himself breaks the fourth wall so he can chat it up with the TV audience.
Hi, I'm Archie. That's my name. But who am I, really?
Next on the character docket, we're introduced to Betty Cooper, played by Audrey Landers.
And I know Archie loves me, in spite of the fact that he sometimes gets turned on by a certain girl who shall remain nameless.
Then, Hilary Thompson portrays Veronica Lodge, who apparently can hear Betty's internal monologue and actually responds to Betty's previous mention of her.
Hi, I'm nameless. You can call me Veronica.
Last but not least comes Mark Wentworth as Reggie Mantle, who again plays off of what has been said in the not-so-internal monologues of the other characters.
I know exactly who I am. I'm Reggie.
Then by this point, all four characters begin to argue various points among themselves until they realize that they've got a show to do.
Wait a minute, hold it! There's people watching us.
At this point, the entire Archie gang blips onto the stage in a cheesy Jefferson Starship light show that is reminiscent of the Star Wars Holiday Special, and we're presented with the title card. The stage is now dark, and then you can see the neon glow outlines of guitars within the darkness. We are then treated to the Archies playing a song about forcibly telling folks to smile like they were from Kids Incorporated or something. For the first time that I can remember, Moose Mason and Midge Klump are also playing instruments as part of the band The Archies. We're also subtly introduced to Jughead Jones, played by Daryl Morey, who is on the drums. After the song ends, Moose and Midge do a comedy bit about how she's a tiny shrimp and he's a huge goofy lummox of a dude. Moose is played by Jim Bolson, while Midge Klump is played by Susan Blue. Though she's done a lot in the voiceover world, any fan of Transformers can tell you that Susan Blue is best known as the voice of Archie.
Stay close to me, Daniel!
And you better stay close to me!
No, you'd better stay close to me.
We are then transitioned to the setting of a Riverdale High biology class, where Reggie is busy telling Archie what a fine and handsome doctor he'll make as an adult.
Hey, you know, Reggie, it's a great idea you becoming a doctor. Maybe you can find a cure for egomania.
As the class begins to settle down, we're introduced to the most awesome thing this pilot has to offer, Miss Geraldine Grundy, who is played exceptionally well by Jane Lambert. Some Archie fans may find that putting down her students is uncharacteristic of Miss Grundy, but Lambert's delivery is funny as all get out.
Good morning. And welcome to As the Stupidity Turns.
Grundy eventually cuts to the chase and lets the class know what the lesson plan will be for the day.
Now, today's test, we are going to examine the most beautiful thing that God ever created. The human body.
Of course, the narcissist in Veronica can't help but to take this as a cue to stand up for all to admire her body.
Not yours, Veronica.
Meanwhile, Jughead is trying to play the class clown, but of course, Miss Grundy is anything but amused.
I hope it's not Miss Grundy's body.
When Miss Grundy reveals that the test for the biology class will be the dissection of a frog, several students voice their objection to the treatment of the lab specimens. Midge Klump is one such objector, alongside her lab partner, Big Ethel, portrayed by Tiffany Twitchell. Those who object to the inhumane treatment of something that isn't human and is already dead are allowed to leave. But Miss Grundy is surprised to find out that Moose Mason is one of the students trying to skip out on the frog dissection.
Moose! You're leaving? You who rip people apart on the football field?
I have a perfectly good reason for leaving, Miss Grundy.
And what might that be?
Moose, let's go.
So now I guess Miss Grundy, as well as the entire audience, know who wears the pants in that particular relationship.
Me? I can't usually get them because my girlfriend's a vegetarian, which pretty much makes me a vegetarian. But I do love the taste of a good burger.
Miss Grundy lets the class know the frog dissection will be performed in teams made up of one surgeon and one assistant. Archie's lab partner is Reggie, so naturally the two argue over who will perform the role of the surgeon, though Reggie wins out in the end. However, Betty and Veronica are also lab partners, and both seem quite eager to beat the boys to the punch.
Veronica? I've misjudged you. I had no idea you had such an interest in science. I've always considered you such a flaky little twit.
While Miss Grundy instructs the kids on how to use the scalpel to make the first incision in the frog specimen, Veronica starts to lose her lunch and passes the buck of being the surgeon on to Betty.
Here, Betty, you cut it.
Of the two, Betty is probably more suited to being the surgeon anyway. Meanwhile, for all of Reggie's big talk about wanting to be a doctor, he's having an awful hard time getting started on the procedure.
I can't! It's looking at me!
Jughead, on the other hand, is not so much dissecting his frog as he is eating it like it was his favorite hamburger from Pop's Chocolate Shop.
This is a tasty burger.
Archie, at this point, is growing tired of Dr. Mantle's indecision to start the cuts on the froggy cadaver.
Come on, Reggie, just use a knife. Act like you're sticking it in your best friend's back.
Of course, the tables turn as we can see Nurse Andrews get sick to his stomach as Reggie finally makes the first incision, albeit with his eyes closed the entire time. Reggie, of course, takes a great deal of pride in his so-called success.
I didn't do it. I did it. I'm a doctor.
The bit ends as Reggie goes so far as to talk to his froggy cadaver as if it was one of his prospective future patients.
You can put your clothes on, madam. I'll see you again in 2 weeks.
The second musical number starts off with Betty declaring in song about how she loves Archie, only to have Veronica and Archie chime in as well.
Why her and why not me to be the object she's affection?
Archie, being a teenage boy, seems to have more lustful feelings than any kind of real love, but I doubt that bothers Veronica very much since it probably feeds her needy ego.
She's so sexy, let's
After the song ends, we're treated to an odd sit-down between Moose and Jughead. Moose confides in Jughead about how people view him as a man of limited intellect, and then Jughead goes into this diatribe about his parents' divorce.
Well, you know, that child custody battle was hard on all of us. All that crying and fighting and pleading and carrying on. There I was right in the middle of it. Well, the judge finally said, look, this can't go on. One of you has to take him.
Well, it's a pretty damn funny punchline. Jughead's folks, Gladys and Forsyth Pendleton Jones II, never got a divorce in the comic books and are a happily married couple. Jughead's mother, Gladys Jones, first shows up within the pages of Archie's Pal Jughead Annual No. 1 by the year 1953. His father, Forsyth Pendleton Jones II, makes his first appearance inside Archie's Pal Jughead Issue No. 27 by the year 1954.
Mom, Dad, Dad, what are you guys doing here?
We got a dinner date with Betty's mom and dad.
Then the next sketch features the gang playing the popular board game Monopoly at Betty Cooper's house. The doorbell suddenly rings and Archie ends up getting the door for Betty, only to discover he's greeting his own parents, Fred and Mary Andrews. Gordon Jump, the actor, who plays Fred Andrews, or Archie's father, may be familiar to television viewers as radio station manager Arthur Carlson from the sitcom WKRP in Cincinnati.
Get out of that chair, Jughead.
Archie's folks then mention how they thought he intended to take Betty out to the movies. However, Archie explains that the rest of the gang wanted to stay in and play the board game Monopoly. When his mother mentions that she thought he disliked the board game, Archie confirms this, but decided to accede to the wishes of the group over his own personal preferences.
Were I to invoke logic, logic clearly dictates that the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. Or the one.
Oh, I actually hate it, but, you gotta go along with the gang.
Oh, the old peer pressure, huh?
When we were young, we were a part of the group, too.
It's all right, son. You'll change. When you get older, you get the courage to express your individuality.
Hal and Alice Cooper first appear inside the pages of Pep Comics issue number 22 in the year 1941. Then we're exposed to the father and son conflict of the pilot as Archie again breaks the fourth wall to let the audience know that while his dad teaches him a lot of things, not being able to make his own decisions makes him feel as though he's not being his own person. We then get to see the specifics of what Archie is talking about while he's waiting tables. I presume he is working as a waiter at Pop's chocolate shop, though the actual location is not mentioned by name one way or the other. Anyway, Archie's nerves are all tense waiting for his pop to show up, and while serving Midge and Moose, he spills Jughead's order all over him.
I just had these pants cleaned a few years ago.
Archie reveals that his dad will make the final decision on the sports car he would really love to buy for himself. Without his father's approval, Archie won't have a cosign or a down payment on his upcoming car loan. Moose finds all this rather amusing.
I didn't know your father was the Lone Ranger. Your mother is Tonto.
Mr. Andrews then arrives at Archie's workplace to give him the news he's been desperately awaiting.
That means you like it.
No, that means let's see what sort of a yo-yo I got for a son.
The father and son clearly disagree on what type of car Archie should be getting.
Then my decision is to buy a sports car.
Good. And my decision is to overrule your decision. What could be more fair? We both had a chance to make a decision.
Mr. Andrews then justifies his decision-making process by engaging a random bystander, inquiring what she would do if her own son wanted to buy a firecracker sports car. After hearing of Mr. Andrews' woes, the lady ends up smacking Moose with her purse by mistake. Then, when Mr. Andrews corrects her, she starts to hit Archie with the purse as well. Archie don't take no guff off random old ladies, though, and actually smacks her back with his dish rag before she vacates the premises. Archie then retaliates against his father's argument by bringing up all the potential responsibilities one faces at 18 years of age, such as voting, defending one's country, and paying taxes.
Dad, please. We have to be old enough to make our own decisions. Yeah!
Right. Archie, I guess I never really looked at it that way before.
While it appears on the outset that Archie's dad actually concedes this point, it becomes a reversal when Archie then asks for advice about his new sports car. The tables have now turned, and his father leaves all the decision-making up to Archie.
Boy, the biggest decision in my whole entire life. I can't even get a little advice from my own father.
The final sketch involves a frantic Archie who is trying to hurry Betty into getting ready for the Riverdale basketball game they're already late for.
Betty! We're gonna be late for the game!
name.
Just as they are about to head out the front door, Betty gets a phone call from her mother. Betty rushes through the call and is bolting with Archie out the front door when Archie asks what that phone call from her mother was all about. Betty indicates there was a big rainstorm that washed out the local bridge, so her parents won't be home until noon tomorrow, and that the two lovebirds have the house all to themselves for the entire night. Although they seem pretty nervous, the inference appears to be that the two want to make the beast with two backs, as Shakespeare might say, or at least make a little kissy face, as Dr. Professor of Retrovirus Movies might say.
What do you think we ought to do?
That all depends on what you want to do.
Well, what I want to do depends on what you want to do.
Admittedly, there is a lot of great wordplay in this sketch between Archie and Betty, subtly, yet not so subtly, skirting around the issue of sex.
What are you thinking about, Archie?
Oh, just this and that.
This and that? What do you mean, this and that?
Oh, not that, this and that.
Well, then, just what this and that did you mean?
Oh, any old this and that.
That's the most insulting thing I ever heard.
Betty, this whole conversation's neither here nor there. Betty, this is the moment that we've always talked about.
Well, you always talked about it, Archie. I was just listening.
Nodding your head, yes, just listening.
Now, when I was nodding, I didn't mean here and now. I meant if and when.
How do we get into if and when and now and then and maybe? It's now or never.
Betty confesses she's not as ready as she thought, which makes Archie all pouty because he's not going to get any.
Well, would you like to watch television?
No. Why should the TV get turned on if we can't?
Then the two decide to go late to the basketball game instead, and typical girl, even though they have this entire house to themselves, she says that
We can always neck the car.
The car.
the pilot wraps up with one last musical number where all the kids play telephone, altering and changing their plans when their friends or dates change plans and cancel on them.
Gotta make some dates tonight. I can't go now. I can't go now. Came down with the food tonight. I can't go now. I can't go now.
Will you go out with me tonight? I gotta know now. I gotta know now. Will you go out with me tonight? I gotta know now. I gotta know now. I thought I had the flu, which means I couldn't go out with you. But now my blues got someone new. So how's about me and you?
Since it's rarely done, it's fairly interesting to see a live-action interpretation of the gang from Archie comics.
And welcome to As the Stupidity Turns.